What's up, everyone? Welcome to This Day in Philly Sports History for February 25th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Tuesday edition of the podcast. It's Tuesday. That means it's time for a little positivity / motivation, and we certainly could use some today. And this one comes from Bob Marley. The weather's starting to get warm, which means I'm a huge Bob Marley fan. I like to put the windows down slightly, yesterday it was slightly due to the fact that it was still a little chilly, but I just listened to some reggae, Bob Marley, and just kind of chill out and relax. And this comes from the song So Much Things to Say. And in the song, he says, when the rain falls, it don't fall on one man's housetop. And I feel like this is a metaphor for life. Obviously, the rain is life's problems, issues, trials, tribulations, all of that stuff. And the house is you. And I think what this quote or this verse in this song is saying is everyone is subject to hardships. Hard times do not miss anybody, no matter how rich, poor, your gender, your color, your race, your ethnicity, any of those things. It does not matter. Hardships are going to hit you. And to me, the first part of this is it's comforting to know that everybody goes through that. So yes, it might seem like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. It might seem like everything's coming crashing down on you. But just know that you're not alone. You're not the only one likely that has gone through a similar situation that people are going through. And I feel like the song is essentially saying you have a choice. You can endure the struggle and get wet in the rain, or you could tackle those hardships head on and find out what their meaning is, learn from them and grow from them and feel the rain. So make a choice. Do you want to get wet or do you want to feel the rain? And I think that goes a long way in determining how things go because, again, you're not alone. You're not the only one going through hardships. So take comfort in that, take solace in that, and learn from it and move on and grow. And I think we can make that connection to sports. Look at what the Eagles did last year. When the rain came, they got wet. And this year, they learned from that. And when the rains came, they felt the rain. They moved on. They grew from it. And they became Super Bowl champions. So you can take a page and learn a lot here from Bob Marley. That when the rain falls, it don't fall on one man's housetop. And know that everybody's going through something. It's just a matter of how you deal with it, and you have that choice. You can either get wet or you can feel the rain. Hopefully you can take that through your week with you, grow from it, learn from it, and become better. That's typically what the point of these Tuesday motivation and positivity segments are. I had a few people, new listeners, reach out and ask why I do this. And if you remember, it goes all the way back to the whole Damar Hamlin thing and how everybody kind of came together and were concerned and really following. And I just thought we needed a little positivity. Sometimes there's a little motivation in there like today, but it's just something I like to do on Tuesdays to really start out the week and really go through. So feel the rain or get wet. The decision's yours, and I'm telling you, if you feel the rain and learn from it, you're going to become better. Sure, you might still get wet, but at least you're going to come out of it feeling better with a better, more solid plan, where if you just get wet, you're just going to be wet and miserable. But the choice is yours. All right, let's do some quick housekeeping before we get into today's episode because we got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, as I always say, I like to make sure I'm giving you everything accurate. And yesterday when we were talking about Claude Vilgrain, I said I thought he went to Switzerland, but I wanted to confirm. And yes, during the lockout, he went to Switzerland, liked it. He ended up also playing in Germany as well, finishing out his professional hockey career. But I wanted to make sure what I gave you was accurate. The Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame ballot is out. People are voting. I already started counting some of the votes and kind of recording them and looking through them. It's going to be, could be another solid class. So you have a chance to have your voice heard as well as win 2 VIP passes to the induction ceremony in November. All you have to do is follow the link in the description, fill out your ballot, and if your ballot most closely resembles the actual 2025 induction class, you will win 2 VIP tickets to the ceremony in November at Live Casino. I put the PDF with all the inductee bios or candidates' bios and everything also in the description. So have some fun. Look at who's on this year's ballot and get your ballot in for a chance to win 2 VIP tickets to the ceremony in November. Always a lot of fun. It's a great ceremony. Live Casino is just awesome. Everybody that comes back is just amazing. So it's a fun event. You want to go. So just fill out the ballot. You got nothing to lose. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mott on Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram, at PhillyJimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mott, and continue to spread the word. Still not happy with TikTok. They took down yesterday's question of the day for whatever reason. The same old BS, personal information. I asked about Joe's legacy. I have no idea what personal information I gave out. So I'm going through the appeal process yet again, but TikTok, you gotta be better. Come on, man. This is like at least once a week one of my videos get taken down. And the format's the same every time. YouTube doesn't have a problem with it when I put it up. Facebook does, and Instagram. Anyway, enough about that. Check out onpattison.com. Good friends of ours. They support us. We're featured in their newsletter that gets emailed directly to your inbox every day. We're in there at least once or twice a week. But go to onpattison.com. Great Philly sports coverage. Lots. I was checking the site a lot yesterday for different things as I was going through my day. It's kind of become one of my go-to news sources. Like I always have like one of my windows or tabs on my work computer with Twitter, on Pattison, and just different news outlets trying to see what's going on, breaking news, things like that. So go check out On Pattison. Like I said, great Philadelphia sports coverage, especially the Phillies now that we're in spring training. So check it out. All right, so let's get into this. And I guess first, let's just start with the game. Let's get that out of the way. 142-110, blown the F out yesterday at home. They were down 50 points at one point. That's not you heard that right. The Sixers were down 50 points at one point. The vibes are off. They look miserable during the post-game interviews. Maxey was asked about tanking, essentially, and he was like, that's not the way I play, which he gave the right answer. I'm not ripping Tyrese for that. He was like, every time I lace up my shoes, I'm going out there to win. It's just not how I'm wired. But this team is spiraling out of control. 8 straight losses now. They got the Knicks tomorrow. But just, man, and I think if you saw the story, secondary tickets were going for like $2, and the fees for those tickets were more than the cost of the tickets, which to me highlights the issue with places like StubHub, the Ticketmaster resale site, all of those things. It's ridiculous. How are you going to charge more for fees than what the tickets cost? But either way, it's not as though parking was discounted or concessions are discounted, which is absolutely ridiculous. I just heard on the news this morning while I was getting dressed, a slice of pizza at the Wells Fargo Center cost more than a ticket to the game last night. That's an issue. But that's a whole other story for another time. But the Sixers, for their part, they tried their best to not give people their money's worth. If you bought a ticket for $2, you should probably be asking for a refund. That's how bad this game was. But they're spiraling. I don't know. There's a good chance that this team gets higher than the 6th pick at this point. No word on Joe. He didn't play. But from what I saw, all of the options that are on the table, and now this is speculation. I don't think any of these came from Joe or the Sixers, but all of the options will require a very, very lengthy recovery time, like a year plus. So I guess my question still becomes, why, if they knew this, why did they wait until now? Why not do it at the beginning of the season? And I know that they were hopeful that the knee would respond, this, that, and the other. But why wait till now? Because now you're ruining – this season was ruined, and now you're going to kind of try to ruin next season as well. I'll get more into that here in a minute, but this team is just a hot mess. And I know a lot of people are talking, well, if he didn't go to the Olympics, I have a feeling that if he went to the Olympics, we're still having this same conversation, because obviously there's something wrong with the knee that they have not been able to figure out how to fix. So whether or not he took the summer off and worked it out and did therapy and all those things, I still feel we're having the same conversation. But that does lead us to yesterday's question of the day. Let's recap it. Lots of feedback on this, not from TikTok users though. But I asked you, what is Joe's legacy? And everybody had a different thing. Some of the stuff, not a winner, that was from Steven in Doylestown. Disappointment came up a lot. Generational talent came up a lot too. A lot of what if, that was from Jason in Coatesville, was just what if. Not a winner. Mentally weak. That one I take issue with, and I'll get into that in a minute. Wasted talent came up. Injury prone. So people had a lot to say about that, but I wanted to give a shout out to Dave in Scranton, Jason in Coatesville, Jerry in Huntington Valley, JT Todd in Coatesville, Stephen in Doylestown, Bill from Flowertown, and Kyle from Coatesville for all. We had a good discussion yesterday on Facebook going back and forth with this. But I'm going to get back to the mentally weak thing. And I know there's a little bit of a difference between mentally weak and heart, but I truly, truly believe you cannot question Joel Embiid's heart. He came back so many times early in the playoffs from fractured orbital bones, knee injuries, he played with Bell's palsy. I don't think you can question his heart. Maybe there was something mentally. Kyle suggested that after the Kawhi Leonard shot, it kind of broke his spirit. We might be having a different question. I cannot agree with that. I can't agree with the selfishness. I can't agree with the heart thing. And even the mentally weak, I have a tough time struggling with, because I feel as though we expected Joe, based on the way he played on the court, to be Superman. The issue is they never got him a sidekick. And we've seen it so many times in the NBA. We saw it with Allen Iverson. Never had a sidekick, a true sidekick, to really take the burden. I mean, we had Jimmy Butler, who that pairing could have been good, but they chose Ben Simmons over him, who ultimately, I think, if anything broke Joe mentally, it was Ben Simmons quitting on him during that Atlanta Hawks series. So if you want to talk about Joe's mental state and what happened, I think, and yes, Kyle, we went back and forth, and he said, no, it's not, he can't control that. He can't. But when you're playing your balls off and your quote-unquote sidekick or the second star of the team literally is hiding at midcourt on offense and passes up a wide open dunk that would have sealed the game, I mean, it's frustrating. And like I said, like, we expect this guy to be Superman, and he's not, unfortunately. Nobody is. I mean, you need, like, Shaquille O'Neal, for as dominant as he was, he didn't win a title until he had, I forget, I guess he won in Miami first, I think. Either way, it took him going to a team with another star. So they chose Ben Simmons as that guy for Joe, and Ben Simmons, you want to talk about weak mentally, Ben Simmons is the one, and again, that's a whole other conversation for another time. And then you brought in, why can't I think of the dude from the Celtics? The spy. Why can I not think of his name? Al Horford. That didn't work out. I mean, you brought these guys in. James Harden. It didn't work out. And that's not on Joe. So I kind of question the heart thing, the mentally weak thing, and he's probably fed up. I think all of this, and it's going back to the other question of the day from earlier in the week, the issue is with the ownership and the management of this team. And look, Josh Harris has a ton of money. He owns 3 teams. It's kind of weird and ridiculous that the Sixers were his first team, and he in Philadelphia and owns two of the bigger rivals of the other teams in the city. But hey, to each his own, doesn't mean you can't do an effective job owning this team. Get a good management team in place, and they haven't done that. They have not done that at all. Daryl Morey, I mean, truthfully, what has he won? I mean, he didn't win in Houston when he was there, and had great teams, great players, but couldn't put them over the top. I think it's time to blow the whole thing up. And I mean, you can't force Joshua Harris to sell this team, but you got to put pressure on him to get a solid. I mean, that's to me the difference. There was a point in time where the Sixers and the Celtics legitimately were bad at the same time, and they both ended up with top 3 picks. But the difference is the management of the Celtics. You had guys like Danny Ainge. You have guys now like Brad Stevens. And that, to me, is the difference between the Sixers and the Celtics, or insert any. Our management group is terrible. Absolutely terrible. They did not set Joe up to be successful whatsoever. So there's kind of my take on that. I think it's a complicated legacy. Like I said yesterday, it's really, I like Jason from Coatesville. What if? Because what if they kept Jimmy Butler and not Ben Simmons? What if? I mean, Jimmy Butler may have forced his way out. I mean, you see what he does everywhere he goes. He's one of those guys like James Harden who is always 2-3 years in looking to get out. But what if? And I think that is the perfect summation for Joe's legacy. But I cannot get on board and cannot agree with saying he has no heart or mentally weak. Did he come up small sometimes in the playoffs? He did. However, he did not have a second in control or second in command. And I think that, or sidekick, whatever you want to call it. And I think that hurt him. We expected Superman, and his kryptonite was his knees. And we're seeing that now. And that isn't necessarily on Joe. That is on the management. That is on Joshua Harris. That is on Daryl Morey. That is on Elton Brand. So I think frustrating would be another good word for Joe's legacy. But thank you to everybody who participated yesterday. Like I said, had some good discussions. I really do appreciate it. Enough Sixers for now. Enough Sixers. All right, tonight the Flyers take on the Penguins down at the Wells Fargo Center. They're only 5 points back of that second wild card, but they have 5 teams to jump over. So the road is going to be tough, but it's not out of the question. No Phillies game yesterday, rained out due to the thunderstorms down in Clearwater. As far as the Eagles, the Combine is this week. Probably won't watch any of that. I know some people get into it. I'm just like, I'll watch the highlights and get the updates from NFL Network. But the other story was the tush push. And when I did my notes for this, it wasn't announced yet. But an anonymous team proposed a rule banning the tush push. I thought there was no way I would have bet the house on it was the Washington Commanders. Turns out it was the Green Bay Packers, who cannot run it themselves and could not stop it either. So either way, I don't know. I think haters are going to hate. The Eagles have figured out how to do something, and they do it well. Josh Allen does it all the time. So I'm not really sure what the big deal is, whether it's a competitive, like, hey, let's get in their heads. And we see, they talk about it every offseason, yet the Eagles still run it. But I thought that was funny. Like, I legitimately would have bet the farm on the Washington Commanders being the ones that proposed it, just because Joshua Harris is a jerk anyway. But it was the Green Bay Packers who proposed it. And I saw this stat, and this is actually pretty cool. And the Eagles have been around since 1933. Ever since their very first game that they lost, they've been under 500. The whole time since 1933. After the Super Bowl, if you count including postseason, the Eagles officially are 667, 665-27. So they are over 500 as a franchise for the first time at the end of a season ever, which I think is pretty cool. And if you count just regular season, they're only one game under 500. So barring a disaster, the regular season all-time record would be over 500. So I thought that was a pretty cool stat going back to 1933. Be sure to check out my boys at the Clashing Conferences podcast. Lots of good things going on at their fan network. Go to clashingconferences.com for information. And then Philly Goat, what can I say? It's shoe season. Go get some of the canvas loafers, get the slides for the pool, pick up the bird wings for next Eagle season, and then pick up a few shirts to go with it. Be sure to use that promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com. Promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off the order. And yes, it's definitely the shoes. Get the shoes. All right, today we're going to go back to 1972. And on this day in 1972, the Phillies pulled off probably the greatest trade in their team history when they sent fan favorite Rick Wise to the St. Louis Cardinals for Steve Carlton. Now, looking back on it, how many ever years later, it looks like a very lopsided trade. But at the time, Steve Carlton wasn't necessarily Steve Carlton yet. Both Rick Wise and Steve Carlton were having contract disputes. And Rick Wise, again, was a fan favorite. He was coming off an all-star season, a season where he pitched a no-hitter and hit 2 home runs in the same game. Fans loved him, and he was playing for some pretty bad Phillies teams. Carlton, though, was also coming off a 20-win season and an all-star appearance. But at the time, their numbers were very, very similar. I think they were essentially, at that moment, the same pitcher. And really, because of the contract disputes, it was a kind of a, hey, let's trade these guys, maybe a change of scenery will get things going. Well, as we know, one of them went on to win 4 Cy Youngs, win a World Series, become a Hall of Famer, and become the best player in one of the team's history, and the other was Rick Wise. Safe to say, in my opinion, that the Phillies won this trade, and they really took a huge step toward that 1980 World Series championship on this day back in 1972. And we all know 1972, Steve Carlton became Steve Carlton, went 27, I think, in 10, and the team only won 59 games. So the Phillies made a big step toward the 1980 World Series championship on this day when they traded Rick Wise to the St. Louis Cardinals for Steve Carlton. And the rest, as they like to say, is history. And I will give you the other side of the coin of this, too. On this day in 1997, the Phillies made probably the worst free agent signing in their team's history. They signed Danny Tartabull to a $2 million deal. Now, this whole story is hilarious. So they offered him a $2 million contract with like a bunch of incentives. He flat out said that is disrespectful to me. And then all of a sudden, nobody else was offering Danny Tartabull even close to $2 million. So he called them and was like, I was just kidding. That's a great offer. When do I sign? Danny Tartabull ended up playing 3 games for the Phillies, went 0 for 7 before he got hurt and eventually retired. So I'll give you both sides of the coin there. But it's all about Steve Carlton today. But that does lead to today's question of today. And I'm very curious to see where this one goes. There's been a lot of trades that Philly teams have made. We know about the bad ones, but they have been good. We brought in Curt Schilling via trade, Cliff Lee, Roy Halladay, all of those guys. But none of them really led us to a championship. So 2 big trades in. You could throw Wilt Chamberlain in there too because the Sixers did win a championship with him. But 2 trades around the same era of teams. Moses Malone or Steve Carlton? What was the bigger and better Philadelphia sports trade? That's a tough one. And I couldn't even tell you right now off the top of my head which one was better. But what do you think? Moses or Carlton? Which was the better Philadelphia sports trade? 267-495-8531. That'll get you into the Back to the Future voice and text line. Still want to vent about Joe? That's fair game. Want to talk about the tush push? That's also fair game, but everything is on the table. But which is a better Philadelphia sports trade, Moses or Steve Carlton? And then finally today, our Black History Legacy makers with Philadelphia ties is Earl Monroe. Earl the Pearl, Black Jesus himself. He's a Philadelphia native, graduated from Bartram High, went to Winston-Salem State, ended up being drafted number 2 overall in the 1967 draft by the Baltimore Bullets. Later in his career was traded to the Knicks. All he did was become a 4-time All-Star, won the NBA championship with the Knicks in 1973. He was on the NBA's All 50th and 75th anniversary teams. He's in the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame, the College and Pro Basketball Hall of Fame. His number is retired by both the Wizards now and the Knicks. But it wasn't about all of the accolades for Earl the Pearl. It was about how he played the game. He revolutionized the way the game was played. He had ridiculous moves. When he was at Bartram, they nicknamed him Thomas Edison because he invented new moves every time he played basketball. I know I'm going back to like my dad's era, but the razzle-dazzle type play, and it was new because at the time the NBA was mostly white guys taking set jump shots. A lot of people were upset with Wilt for dunking, where they banned dunking, I think, at one point for a little bit in the NBA. But Earl the Pearl was the guy that came in with all the flashy moves. You couldn't stop him. I mean, and that was the thing. He had these moves, and you couldn't stop him. And he kind of changed the game to be kind of more of that individual style and flash and substance, or however you want to word it, but still within the team context. He was able to do those moves and still help his team win, as evident as the fact he's a Hall of Famer and an NBA champion. But Earl the Pearl helped lead to guys like Dr. J, who led to Michael Jordan, who led to what we see today in the NBA, Allen Iverson, guys like that. But without Earl the Pearl Monroe, none of that probably would have happened. He was just an amazing razzle-dazzle, to borrow my dad's term again, guy, where it revolutionized the game, really. Took it from just the set jump shot and layups and big men down in the post hitting easy layups to really a game that was more entertaining. And I think a guy like Earl the Pearl, you don't have today's NBA without a guy like Earl the Pearl. So Earl, Philly Zone, thank you for all that you've done, all that you've contributed. He wasn't done when he was done playing too. Opened up a charter school up in the Bronx, always giving back to the community and everything like that. But Earl, thank you for paving the way, even if it was with the stinking Knicks. Earl the Pearl Monroe, today's Black History Legacy maker with Philadelphia ties, Black Jesus himself. On this day in 1972, Phillies made the biggest trade in their team history when they sent Rick Wise to the Cardinals for Steve Carlton, and we all know how that played out. Honorable mention, in 1997, they signed Danny Tartabull, but enough about that. Be sure to let me know, though, what is the bigger trade in Philly sports history? Is it Moses coming from the Houston Rockets or Steve Carlton coming from the St. Louis Cardinals? Let's have some fun with that on a Tuesday. We'll have more on the Phillies, Sixers, Flyers, Eagles, and Union tomorrow. Whew. Remember, when the rain falls, it doesn't fall on one man's housetop. You're going through something, but everybody else goes through stuff too. It's all about how you choose to deal with the rain. Are you going to get wet, or are you going to feel the rain and grow from it? Take that into your weeks as we go. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for February 25th, 2025. My name is Jim Montgomery, and until next time, go have yourselves a Tuesday, and I'll see you when I see you.